I remember my father was involved in the movement to try and get the United States to take over Newfoundland as a protectorate like Hawaii and Alaska was. And I think primarily that was because he didn't think the terms Canada was talking about were fair. And he was probably right, because in 1959 we had to reopen the terms of union and renegotiate. So he also said to me, he said, you know, the Americans had far more knowledge of what Newfoundland had here than, say, Canada. Canada didn't even really care about us because they were most concerned with their own new country. And he said Americans knew about oil, or suspected oil, and suspected minerals in Labrador. They had all kinds of information that Canadians didn't really care about. Then all of a sudden, when the war came and they had 65,000 Americans living in Newfoundland, it realized how important Newfoundland was to the scheme of things in terms of how close it was to Europe for the war. Anyhow, then I guess Canada got interested. So here we are, part of Canada, which is fine. Now, the thing that I remember most about it is when I was a young kid, we had our own currency here before Confederation. It was the Newfoundland dollar. And we had a 20-cent piece, and I was getting 20 cents as my allowance. When we joined Canada, they didn't have 20-cent pieces. So I suddenly got a raise to 25, which you could buy a lot in those days. I think it was a rural vote mainly because Joey Smallwood promised them all baby bonus and old age pension like it was coming out of his pocket practically. And I think they bought into that. The urban vote was totally against Confederation. I mean, I remember pictures of my father wearing a black armband, and a lot of the old homes in St. John's had black bunting hanging down over their house to sort of in mourning for having to join Canada. I wasn't a big Joey fan. I think the interesting thing with Joey was he did a lot of things for Newfoundland. A lot of things were good, a lot of things were bad, or a waste of money. But building the university was probably his greatest achievement. However, all those out-of-towners from rural Newfoundland who came into university suddenly realized, this guy Smallwood's not the greatest. I'm going home and tell Mom and Dad to stop voting for Smallwood. And that was kind of his demise, really. That was the beginning of his downward slide. I think it was great for the rural Newfoundlanders because I think they all did well by it. The business improved, roads were paved. All that money must have come from Ottawa as well as our own pockets here. No question, I think, and I mean, one of the big things, of course, with joining Canada instead of the United States, if we joined the United States, we've all been fighting in Vietnam. That wouldn't have been much fun. So subscription here basically was during the Second World War of a sort, but there wasn't a big force then. So I think joining Canada has been a good thing. I think I'm proud to say I'm Canadian. I think probably the rest of Canada thought, what do you mean? You should be delighted to be part of us. What are you talking about? They really didn't care. It wasn't until Britain got involved, because Britain decided they couldn't afford to keep Newfoundland or support Newfoundland, and they got sort of involved with Canada. Come on, I will give you a deal. You take over Newfoundland and get it off our back. I think Canadians got involved, but then I think over time they realized the natural resources we have. I mean, our lumber, our iron ore, the fishery, all those things we could contribute largely to Canada over time. I'd like to see, I think oil is not going to give up being produced because there's a lot of things we can use oil for other than bad stuff. So I'd like to see our oil fields being properly used and produced. I mean, we have a very good quality oil. It doesn't take much to refine it, apparently, as far as I hear. And I'd like to see our natural resources developed, you know, those kind of things, and be successful. Rural Newfoundland is going to be tough because all those little communities now have got older people living in them, and the young people are all moving away to other parts of Canada or to St. John's. That's going to be tough. We have to deal with that. We have to deal with cutting down the number of communities. And just think about all the roads you've traveled all over Newfoundland. They have to be plowed, they have to be repaired, they have to be all that stuff. That's going to be tough.